And welcome back. We got a ton of news and politics today. I think we're going to get started right away with a story about RFK. I think he's really positioning himself well for a candidacy in 2028, possibly for the White House or vice presidential candidate. I would think more along the lines of presidential candidate because of his age. I got my producer Nat over here.
Hello.
And let's get right into it. She'll be reading the articles and hopefully giving some commentary.
From Eric Doherty, hundreds of young Americans have flooded the sidewalks in downtown D.C. to watch Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at TPUSA's George Washington University event.
Yeah, let's play the clip a little bit if we can, just so we can see how many people kind of came out.
And you're
Okay, and we can kind of stop it there. And we have to remember, this is Washington, D.C. This is an absolute Democratic stronghold. I don't think there's another city in the United States that has as much Democrats living within that city. So the fact that there's such a turnout for RFK, and he came over to the Republican Party as a disenfranchised liberal, he could very much go back to the Democratic Party if they have trouble finding a candidate that they think can win. Also, he could run as a Republican. Right now, J.D. Vance looks like the front runner, but there is a lot of drama within the conservative movement, the American First movement, the MAGA movement. We're going to get into that a little bit later. I got a series of articles, including TPUSA uninviting Tim Pool, which was very interesting. It just broke before I came on the air. That being said, I think RFK is very well positioned because he can appeal to both disenfranchised liberals and Republicans, and he shows even in these liberal strongholds he's very, very popular. TPUSA has been getting good turnouts in red states, but in other Democratic states not as well. And for him to be really the featured speaker that everybody's kind of out there to see, it's very interesting. TPUSA is really getting rid of a lot of their heavy hitters and heavy guests that they would normally have. RFK has the ability to kind of cross the aisle.
And TPUSA is Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization, and RFK Jr. is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Okay, and let's go into this other news about Venezuela. Hold on.
From World at War, Trump officials reportedly considering exiling Maduro.
Okay, and this is what I had been saying for literally months. As soon as Trump got into office, I had brought this up. There were secret talks in Mexico City at the very first of Trump's first term, and he almost had Maduro step down in almost this exact same agreement. If Trump would have won, I think the deal would have gone through. Trump's term ended, and then Maduro backed out of the deal. That's why we were seeing all these military assets put in Venezuela. Trump likes to kind of put himself forward as an anti-war candidate. The new conservative movement is really an anti-war movement. So if he goes into Venezuela, he's going to really risk losing a lot of his supporters. If he gets Maduro to step down, he's going to be able to not only keep his support, but probably garner even more support. Is there a video for this one?
I believe so, but it says recent reports indicate that officials in the Donald Trump administration are actively discussing scenarios for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down voluntarily and enter exile, with Russia among the potential destinations being weighed alongside others like Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Cuba.
Yeah, and I think Russia would be the primary place he would be looking to go to because they could offer real security to him. Where do you think he might go if he goes?
I don't know. I don't know. Other than Cuba, I don't know many places that want him.
Well, I'm not sure if he can live the kind of life he wants in Cuba.
Do you want to see if there's a video?
No, there's not. Okay, let's continue on to the next story here.
Oh, and Rafa says hello.
Good to see ya.
Well, you're not seeing him, but good to say thank you for saying hello. Let us know where you think Maduro might go, if he does go.
Well, I think this is a big thing, and I think this is the biggest gathering of military assets since the Iraq war. That being said, I don't think Trump wants to go in there. I think he wants to focus on Mexico, the Mexican cartels. I think he wants to do that through the Mexican government and the cooperation of the Mexican government. I think he's currently putting pressure through protests in the country, as well as kind of dangling the carrot of the tariffs out there with Sheinbaum, really keeping her in line, forcing her cooperation to kind of go after the cartels. At least that's my inkling. I don't think he wants to forcefully go into Venezuela. I had kind of said that for months. I started kind of thinking the other way for a little while because there were so many military assets. But it looks like my original thesis was probably correct. He's going to get Maduro's family, his generals, and his inner circle to step down, go into exile, and probably take a lot of money with them.
And speaking of Mexico, from Representative Carlos A. Jimenez, under Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico is no friend to the United States. It's why I supported President Trump's common sense policies to stop the Morena government from further undermining the U.S. policy and threatening the safety of American citizens.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this with the protests going on over the weekend in Mexico City. They were called the Gen Z protests. We actually went out there. We were walking with them. It wasn't the largest protest. It was big, but not as big as a lot of these protests actually get in Mexico City. And it was extremely peaceful compared to other protests we had gone to. We did not go to the end, but we did watch what happened through X and through different video. And it did not look like the people that were marching in the march were the ones causing the violence at the end. I think most people stop before they go to the town square because they know most protests end in violence. If they do end in violence, it happens in the town square. It looks like these people were possibly placed there by a U.S. administration or the Sheinbaum administration. I said over the next 30 days, we would kind of have to watch to see who gets what out of this. If Sheinbaum points to these violent protests and starts implementing internet censorship as well as censorship on her political opponents, then it could maybe be determined that Sheinbaum wanted this violence and kind of plotted this violence to happen in Mexico City. So far, none of that has really come out from her. It's still early on. The Trump administration, on the other hand, a lot of people are coming out. A lot of content creators are also coming out in the United States to kind of create this narrative that the Mexican people want the Americans to come in and clean up the cartel. And although there are some people in Mexico that might want that, I don't know if it's really as much as the media is kind of portraying this to be. Right now, it kind of looks like these first few days after these riots kind of happened in Mexico City's town square, possibly the U.S. had some involvement in this. Okay, we can play this clip.
Trump also said, speaking of Mexico, that he would be okay launching strikes in Mexico to stop the flow of drugs. What was your response to that?
My response to that is we need to pick up the phone and call Sheinbaum, President Sheinbaum. She's got protests in her own country now. Her people have finally woken up to the fact that she may be involved in this too. Look, the cartels that control the northern part of Mexico not only have been shipping this poison and facilitated the shipment of this poison into the United States, but also help with a mass migration of millions of people into the United States. Her government is no friend of the United States. And yes, her hands are dirty too when it comes to the killing of American citizens. And so I would call her and say, hey, you got 2 weeks, man, to clean up your act in the northern border, or else, I've got to protect my citizens. And again, President Trump has to protect the American citizens because that's his number one duty.
Trump also said,
and yeah, it kind of sounds like the U.S. administration is starting to put a ton of pressure on Sheinbaum to either step down, get out of the way, or help the administration with the cartels and to clear out the cartels, much like he's putting pressure on Venezuela. Having that huge gathering of American military power within the Gulf of Mexico is really putting pressure on Venezuela as well as Sheinbaum, I would think. This far, I would say the Americans are kind of revealing their hand, and I would definitely point more towards the Americans than Sheinbaum being implicated in the violence that happened over the weekend. That being said, Sheinbaum could definitely come out, start being a very pro-censorship. A lot of the laws are already there. She has a consolidation of power within the judiciary within Mexico, so it would be very easy for her to implement a lot of censorship laws in Mexico. She's kind of behind when you look at Europe, Canada, and other places. I'm completely against censorship, but if she uses this as an excuse to bring censorship in, I would definitely say she was coordinating the violence on Saturday in Mexico City. Okay, let's go into the next article here. And this was actually really big, almost doubling the investment in American manufacturing here.
From Disclosed TV, Saudi Crown Prince says he will increase investment into the U.S. to, and I don't know what that number is.
That's $1 trillion.
To $1 trillion.
So that the original investment was going to be $600 billion. They're now talking about increasing that investment to $1 trillion. I think Saudi Arabia has a lot of money, and this kind of division that's happening in MAGA right now, I think Saudi Arabia is actually the way out. What do I mean by that? Israel currently gets almost $4 billion a year. That money's given to Israel. Israel gives the money right back to the United States and gives it directly to military contractors. The military contractors in turn give military weapons over to Israel. Now, with Saudi Arabia investing $1 trillion, if they took $4 billion of that and just started financing Israel the $4 billion to replace the U.S., it would allow the U.S. to stop funding Israel outwardly and would allow U.S. to kind of draw out from the Middle East and creating a new alliance with Saudi Arabia and Israel. This was kind of proposed on, what's that show that I watch? Base Camp. He goes very much in depth on this proposal of getting Saudi Arabia involved with Israel and the United States pulling out. I was actually very surprised at how many statements Netanyahu actually gave that he potentially wants to end U.S. funding of Israel. I think he wants to save his relationships and his allies within the conservative movement in the U.S. I think this would be the best way to do it. So I think Saudi Arabia is going to play a huge role in that region going forward because there are such allies with the United States and they do have good relations with Israel. And it would be the one way to kind of reunite the conservative movement before the midterms or before the 2028 elections. If you're more interested in this topic about the U.S. possibly pulling funding from Israel and the UAE replacing that funding, Basecamp is a fantastic podcast. They went into the subject in depth today.
Do you want to play the video?
We can play the video, yeah.
But no president ever gave us the go-ahead. 3 times a year they went out and they practiced the attack. Nobody let us do it until you came along, and I let them do it because it was the right thing to do. You can't have a nuclear Iran. And so we put you in a very good position. But I just want to say it's an honor to be your friend, and it's an honor that you're here. And if you'd like to say a few words, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. This relation has been a relation for about 9 decades, and we've been working together for a long time. But today it's a very important time in our history because there's also a lot of things that we're working on in the future. We believe in the future of the United States of America. We believe in what you're doing, Mr. President, is really creating a lot of good things and good foundation to create more economic growth, more business in America. And it will also your work for the world peace. I believe, Mr. President, today and tomorrow we're going to announce that we are going to increase that $600 billion to almost $1 trillion of investment, real investment and real opportunity by details in many areas. And the agreement that we are signing today in many areas in technology, in AI, in earth materials, magnet, etc., that will create a lot of investment opportunities.
So you are doing that now. You're saying to me now that the $600 billion will be $1 trillion.
Definitely, because what we are signing will facilitate that. And
I like that very much.
Okay, and that's pretty good. This being said, Saudi Arabia is a key opponent. That was one of the reasons the U.S. was able to have the U.S. dollar as the world currency backed by oil and a lot of oil trades. So they're kind of coming out of that previous deal with the oil-backed currency. So I think there's going to be a lot more investment from Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States really strengthening that relationship. It would be best if Saudi Arabia stepped into that role and America could potentially pull back in order to unify the party. We're going to go more into this in a little bit with a couple Israel articles, and they've been talking really crazy lately about possibly launching nukes at Iran and also launching another strategic attack in Iran's direction. If that happens, the U.S. definitely needs to kind of pull back and let Saudi Arabia and other players within that region align with Israel. Otherwise, there's just going to be too much heat on the U.S. Okay, let's go into this next story, and this one was pretty interesting.
From Libs of TikTok, elected Democrats just released a video encouraging members of the military to commit treason and defy orders from Trump and Hegseth.
Yeah, so this is prominent Democrats, some of which used to be in the military, telling military personnel to defy orders. Now they're going to say they're telling them to defy unlawful orders, but this could go really south really fast. I think most of the military is conservative. That being said, there was a huge push by the Biden administration and previous administrations to kind of clear conservatives out of the military and bring in more liberals. I don't know how successful that was. I know they were successful when it came to CIA and FBI recruitment. It is absolutely ideologically infested. The military, I don't think so much. So, but they're also calling on FBI and CIA members to kind of do the same.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day
to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now. Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens. Like us, you all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home. Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
in the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you. We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
And they're saying that they have their back. They don't have their back as soon as they defy orders. And if they can't prove these were unlawful orders, they're going to be doing long stints in jail. And these Democratic congressmen and women are just going to forget about and abandon these people. Okay, let's go into the next story we kind of have here.
From Brian Allen, Massey finally says a part of the I can't read today. Massey finally says a part the GOP's been choking on. The Speaker, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the President, and the Vice President could have spared our party months of humiliation if they'd just done the right thing 4 months ago.
Yeah, and here he's talking about the Epstein files, and I think he's bang on the money. I also think Marjorie Taylor Greene is bang on the money on this issue. They're kind of leading the way. The party broke from Trump on this particular issue, and rightfully so. Trump's name's kind of appearing in these files more than I thought. Nothing criminal, just very embarrassing things for him. Trump's not going to be there in a couple of years, and people are going to remember how these people voted. Let's see what Massey had to say, and then I'll kind of comment on it.
Well, he got tired of me winning, so he joined our side. I have no animosity toward him. I regret that it got personal for some folks, but it never has for me. It's always been about the survivors.
What do you think is a reversal? I mean, after months of fighting you.
Well, the Speaker, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the President, and the Vice President could have saved us all this time and embarrassment, frankly, for our own party if they'd just done the right thing 4 months ago.
Do you believe him, Congressman? I mean, for weeks he's been pushing against this. Now he said he supports it. Do you buy it?
He's only supporting it because the President told him to support it.
No,
that's what Mike Johnson does.
No, I'm talking about, do you buy President Trump saying that he wants the House to pass this resolution?
Well, I'm concerned that now he's opening a flurry of investigations, and I believe they may be trying to use those investigations as a predicate for not releasing the files. That's my concern.
You think they'll try to block it?
Well, they will. I'm afraid they're going to try to use a provision of the law that allows you not to release these materials if they're subject of an ongoing investigation and would harm, and the release of which would harm the ongoing investigation.
So what do you think this is all about for President Trump? First, he was blocking this, pushing Republicans to block this for so long. Now he's reversing course, and he has the power to release the full files anyway.
Well, it's pretty simple. For 4 months, he thought the best thing for him was to keep the files secret, and somebody convinced him that the best thing for him was to release the files. And if they're serious about it, they should release them right now. It's that simple.
Why do you think he...
Okay, that's pretty good. And I will say this, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Trump because Trump honestly doesn't want these files released, it looks like. He's now come out and said, yes, release the files. But I think behind the scenes, he's going to tell Speaker Mike Johnson and Pam Bondi that make ongoing cases and tell the American public there are ongoing cases, therefore that we can't release the files even if President Trump wants to. And that's not the case. If Trump wants the files released, he can do it by executive order. He needs to do this. He needs to push for it. I had said on yesterday's show, Trump was going to work behind the scenes with Pam Bondi, tell her not to release the files because there was ongoing cases, but publicly try to kind of say that he wants the files released. At this point, they need to be released. If anything happens other than the release of these files, and if Pam Bondi comes out and says, we don't want to release the files because there are ongoing cases, this is not going to look good for Trump. I will definitely hold that against Trump if that's what happens. Trump wants them released. He can get them released. If they don't release them, sign an executive order. The party has kind of broke ranks with him, and the party wants it released. The American public wants it released. He ran on releasing them. Pam Bondi said they had it on her desk. Cash Patel said they had them. I mean, this is turning into a shit show. It's now or never. If Pam Bondi comes out and said there's an ongoing case, so we can't release the files, that's a bunch of bullshit. Okay, what's the next? Oh, we have Bill Maher here.
Yes.
I will say one more thing about these Epstein files, and that is Speaker Mike Johnson has already come out and said, oh, it's going to be hard to release the files because there's a lot of asset names in there. And even if we redact them, there's a lot of private information in there. I just don't believe it. And that's even worse than Pam Bondi coming out and saying that there's an ongoing case. I think Mike Johnson is going to be the first one coming out saying what he's already said. There are too many CIA and FBI assets in the files, so we can't release them. Once that doesn't work, Pam Bondi's going to come out and say we have an ongoing case. And at that point, shit needs to roll downhill or roll uphill right on Trump's head. And Trump needs to sign an executive order at that point and release everything if he wants to continue to have the trust of the American people. Okay, let's go into Bill Maher. And this was a pretty good clip. You don't need to read it all. I think the clip's going to kind of speak for itself here.
I'll just give a little bit of context. From Vigilant Fox, Bill Maher leaves his guest, Patton Oswalt, visibly dumbfounded after yanking him out of his liberal bubble, which many are still a part of.
He tries to kind of push back on Bill Maher here, and Bill Maher just isn't having it. Bill Maher is bang on. And it's been said since Bill Maher had dinner at the White House with Trump, he's kind of changed his opinion, and he's a lot more amicable to Trump. So, and he has dinner with Trump on a regular basis now, supposedly.
And Patton Oswalt is an actor from Hollywood. If you don't know who that is, he's in a bunch of different things.
Yeah, he's a woke piece of shit.
I hate to admit this. This country is not as mature as it thinks it is. We elected Obama, and clearly the country freaked out. We're still living in that freak out. We are not as progressed and evolved and intelligent as we think we are because we keep freaking out about this stuff.
Well,
you know?
The left freak out too. The left freaked out about a lot of bullshit too.
What did they freak out about?
Gender, race, parenthood, schools, homelessness, crime, the border, education. Like we stopped being a scientific people. Like it's not scientific.
But the left certainly stayed scientific.
No, they didn't.
Why not?
Because they think gender bullshit that they went way too far with. That's not scientific.
But how did I'm not trying to, how did they go too far with like gender stuff? And I'm not
instead of if I was teaching children, what I would teach them is there is a default setting for the human being, which is heterosexuality, but that doesn't mean every person is that, and we should completely respect everyone who isn't that. But we understand that's called a minority, and what makes us a great country is that we respect minorities. We don't think they're lesser just because they're lesser in numbers. That's not what we started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes.
When were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
to teach what?
Don't put sex on the birth certificate. We'll see. Now, we've passed that period now.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I mean,
I know, because it doesn't get in the blue sky bubble.
Wait a minute, I'm not just on blue sky.
I really think that's a lot of it, is that some of this stuff doesn't get in to everybody's media.
Okay, yeah, and I don't remember that part. He's currently living in California. This is currently going on in California. I don't remember. This is the same thing that happened during the era of the jibby jab, and that's why often on our other show, when we go over to Rumble, I bring up that era of history a lot so we don't forget. So people like this say, oh, that never happened. We're the party of science. Trust the science. Believe the science. The science doesn't change. That was the liberal line. There is no man. There is no woman. And at this point, the conservatives are having a big fracture. I'm going to be very disappointed in the midterms if the Democrats manage to kind of win there and bring back a lot of these policies, or there's a resurgence of absolutely stupefied science, I would call it.
And also at the beginning of this year and a little bit last year, we started saying that people would start trying to gaslight the fact that they did believe all these things, that they did support all these things, and just pretend like nothing ever happened.
Yeah. Okay, and I mean, the conservatives have a lot of ammo to play with. The problem is they're giving the opposition a lot of ammo at this point, and the current ammo they're giving the opposition is current events. And if we got to keep reliving the past, then we got to keep relitigating the past. Conservatives really need to start looking where they entrenched these laws and they still haven't taken them down, and point at these things in the midterms. Okay, let's go into Israel here.
Which is one of the things that conservatives are fracturing over for no reason. From Marian Afwa, Israel builds wall into Lebanon, the UN fumes. Tensions are cranking up again as Israel crews were out there Sunday hammering away at a concrete wall along the Lebanon border. Israel shrugging off Beirut's vow to drag him to the UN Security Council over chunks allegedly poking into Lebanese turf beyond the UN's blue line.
And I'll get you to keep reading this in just a moment, but let's just say the day after there was a peace negotiation with Palestine, Israel had hit Lebanon the same day, and now they want to build a wall on their territory. Like, I understand you need a wall at that border, but don't put that on their territory. That's just going to inflame tensions more. Israel currently has 7 wars going on right now. It's way too many. I'm not going to tell them how to run their country, but they're not able to defend themselves in 7 wars without the help of others to the tune of billions of dollars. So, like, Benjamin Netanyahu at this point is just a war-hungry monger. They need to get a new leader within that country that can really start preaching a little bit more peace. If they do need to have conflicts, try to have them as small as possible. Don't start putting walls on other people's lands. That's only going to cause more of a conflict. They're currently in a war with Lebanon, so okay, you can continue here.
Lebanon's presidency claims the wall snagging land near Yaroun, making about an acre off limits to locals, and slamming it as a straight-up breach of Resolution 1701 and their sovereignty. Israel's military? Nah, they say it's all on their side, no crossing. UN bigwigs back Lebanon's gripe, calling out the violation. Then things got dicey. Israel troops fired on UN UNIFIL peacekeepers in South Lebanon, mistaking them for suspects in foggy weather near El Hammam.
Okay, we can play the video. There's some video of Israel kind of building this wall, and Israel has a wall around most of their country, or large portions of their country, especially with Palestine. I'm all in favor of having a wall on the Lebanese border. Just don't put it on their side of the border. It's not going to end well.
Continued to build a concrete wall on Sunday along Israel's side of the border with Lebanon, a day after the Lebanese presidency said the country will complain to the United Nations Security Council over the wall. It extends beyond the UN-mapped blue line, which separates Lebanon from Israel and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, according to the presidency. An Israeli military spokesperson on Friday denied that the wall crossed the blue line, but a spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General said the wall has made almost an acre of Lebanese territory inaccessible to the local population.
We underscore that the Israeli presence and construction on Lebanese territory is a violation of Security Council Resolution 1701, as well, obviously, of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Adding to the tensions, Israeli forces opened fire on United Nations peacekeepers in southern Lebanon on Sunday, in an incident the UN peacekeeping mission described as a serious violation. None of the UN forces were reported wounded.
Okay, and that's pretty good. I'll talk about this if you can go check on the dog real quick because she's eating in her bed. I will say about this, they already built this wall and they're going to continue to build it even though there is opposition and the UN is kind of speaking up about this. I think what's going to end up happening, they have built the wall, they're going to negotiate to keep that wall up, and then they'll build another wall on their land, so there'll be a double wall. That being said, I don't think Lebanon's going to take the wall down once it's already built, even if Israel builds a secondary wall actually on their border. Now, I wish they would have built the wall on their border in the first place, as in not to inflame tensions in the region any further. But Israel seems to just constantly want to inflame tensions. We have a another article in just a moment where Benjamin Netanyahu again is talking about he's going to strike Iran even if the United States does not want to help. Okay, let me grab the mouse here and see if I can switch to the next article here. Okay, and the next article is actually going to be about the Trump shooter. This is the original shooter that happened the first time where his ear got nicked. A lot of information is kind of coming out about this. It's not looking good for the FBI. The FBI completely tried to cover this case up, said he had no social media platforms, and come to find out he had like 14 or 15 social media accounts. People are now gaining access to these accounts. Tucker Carlson had an investigative team look into this guy. The amount of information that had come out last week was insane. The FBI is trying to play catch up here and trying to recover this thing up. And here comes Nat. I'll let her read the article really quick.
You really are helpless without me, aren't you?
Well, I talked a little bit.
From Benny Johnson, it has now been confirmed that attempted Trump assassin Thomas Crooks used they/them pronouns, had a deep interest in furries, and was exploring gender identity. Added to the list, Charlie Kirk's assassin, Tyler Robinson, had a furry obsession and lived with a transgender boyfriend, and an Annunciation Catholic Church shooter identified as trans, Nashville Christian shooter identified as trans, Lakewood Church shooter identified as trans, Colorado...
Okay, and let's kind of leave it here. Now, Benny Johnson, we have to realize, holds the conservative line on every single issue. So you have to take this with a grain of salt. There's other information coming out. This was directly implicated in the MK Ultra program, which seems to be continuing to go on under a different name now. This information is just coming out. If a lot of these current shooters, like this gentleman, like the Charlie Kirk shooter, like the second shooter, are all implicated with one thing, and that is connections to the FBI, it's not going to look good for the FBI. It's really going to break trust between the American people and those institutions. With Trump getting back into office and putting his people in there, people were willing to give a lot of these institutions a second chance. But they seem to be failing us all over again. They're in there, they have the ability and access to release this information, yet they're directly lying to the American people. Now, did this guy have a furry fetish? I don't know. Was he a conservative? I don't know. I don't know what to believe at this point, but he did have FBI connections, and the FBI was talking to him on a regular basis. When I say the FBI, I mean a retired FBI agent, which is very suspicious. Charlie Kirk shooter also had a connection with an FBI connection as well.
Alleged.
Alleged, yeah. I think we're going to see when the trial comes out, I guess, with that. Also, the other shooter that was already convicted had CIA connections. So all these shooters have one thing in common, and it seems like they have connections with the government. Are the government intentionally trying to turn these people into assassins? Okay, let's go into Megyn Kelly here.
From Colin Rugg, Megyn Kelly suspects the FBI handed over info on Thomas Crooks being a furry to Miranda Devine to head fake people from Tucker Carlson's story on Crooks. She says the whole thing stinks and that there's clear implications that Tucker's piece is that the guy was recruited by someone to conduct this horrific act.
And that's the thing. These are the dots the general public is connecting at this point, that all of these shooters and both Trump shootings and Charlie Kirk shootings, that they were recruited by either the FBI or another three-letter agency inside the government in order to do these things.
This is very odd.
Oh, and one moment. If they were recruited to do these things, then you got to be asking yourself, what kind of narrative is the government trying to play with the American people here?
This is very odd that just now Tucker comes out with this information. Miranda Devine, I don't know. I have no idea, Glenn. My suspicion is that Tucker dropped this bomb on Thursday. The FBI was defending itself, over the weekend since Thursday. And then Miranda Devine gets a big scoop on Monday. Do not have anything to back this up other than my suspicion that the FBI probably provided this data to Miranda. That's my guess, because she just has excellent sources inside the government. And to me, this almost seems like
a second. We're going to continue with this, but I want to say there is this huge conservative rift that is currently going on, and it seems like one half of this rift is completely in line with the administration and isn't going to break ranks, while the other side is kind of pointing things like this out when it's happening, saying this looks suspicious. If the government's involved in a lot of dirty deeds and covering up information, even if it is Trump and even if we do support him, we're going to kind of call it out. And I think that's the right path to have going forward.
And fake, like look over here instead of at what Tucker did, because it's just too coincidental that, as you point out, we've had nothing on this guy, nothing. And now suddenly two big information dumps. Tucker's, he's being honest about exactly where he got it. Then comes this stuff about he's a furry. You tell me, why would the government not have shared that? Like, truly, why wouldn't the FBI have been sharing that, the furry thing, with us? Because this FBI did share that around the Nashville shooter, the young woman who was identifying as male, whereas Biden's FBI wouldn't. But this FBI did share those facts about that shooter. This FBI did share those facts about the Charlie shooter. So I'm a little confused as to what may be going on behind the scenes.
Right. And also in terms of the political trajectory that Tucker outlined, and that was great reporting because it took you along the way on this political path that this shooter seemed to have traversed by virtue of analyzing his online footprint, from going from somebody on the far right, ranting and raving against how Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and the squad need to be murdered and immigrants need to be murdered, to something that resembles someone more on the left, very critical of Trump for his handling of COVID.
A lot of people are looking at, before I kind of go into, a lot of people are kind of looking into this case decentralized outside of the government with the information that's online. But why is the American public having to look into all this and finding so many details that the FBI is outright denying say didn't happen, and then they're completely doing a 180 on their story when the evidence actually comes out from all these YouTube sleuths? Okay, if you want to see more, I definitely recommend watching this Glenn Greenwald interview with Megyn Kelly. And let's go into Basil the Great had put this up.
From Basil the Great, court rules that criticizing Islam is a protected belief. You cannot be sacked or prosecuted for criticizing Islam. A victory for common sense.
Yeah,
right, now I can talk freely.
This is completely in the vein of free speech. This should have been the law from the beginning. There seems to be a two-tiered policing system within the UK. And yeah, this is one small victory in a landslide of non-victories that are kind of going against not only Christians, but the natural citizens of those countries for calling out not only immigrants, but Islam for some horrific deeds that have happened, like the grape gangs within that country. The fact that they're getting this one little victory, I wouldn't be overly happy right now, because they are legalizing legal immigration, so they don't have to call it illegal immigration anymore in the UK by kicking in one illegal out the back door and then taking two more in the front door with a deal they've cut with France.
To be honest, there's been a ruling in court this week which introduced, or I guess affirmed a law which, to be honest, I thought we could already do. It is now legal for you to criticise Islam in this country. That is now a protected belief. A bloke called Patrick Lee put up some pretty robust comments on social media, and he's been going through a 4-year process through an employment tribunal, which has ended with a judge saying that it should be a protected belief to criticise Islam. And of course it should be, for two reasons. Number one, the left have conflated race with religion and culture in this country very effectively. You can't choose your race. That should be something which is morally abhorrent to criticise, to discriminate on the basis of. A religion or a culture is a choice. That is something which should be open to debate. And make no mistake, there are questions that need to be answered around the fringes of Islamic culture and in Islamic communities when it comes to the treatment of women, minority groups.
And let's pause it for 1 second. And let's remember, they're bringing Sharia law and Sharia courts into a lot of these countries. They're even bringing them into Texas right now. The UK, they're running wild. The amount of political power Islam has within these voting blocks that vote homogeneously is getting pretty insane, and they're being able to implement laws and their will at will. Thank goodness for this ruling, but it's not nearly enough. There's still so many things that go against the citizens of their country. We're seeing a lot less people identifying with their country and a lot more people identifying with cultural groups, whether that's Islam or Christianity or a racial group or something like that. Okay, we can continue to play that last clip, actually. Oh. The other commentators actually get in on it.
Separation of mosque and state. This is a really positive result for free speech in this country. It's just sad that it's got to a point where a judge actually has to affirm this as opposed to it being common sense.
I totally agree with you. This is when I saw this ruling, I was completely gobsmacked because, again, as you said, this should just be commonplace. We have established here for hundreds and hundreds of years that we have criticism of religion of all colours. Of all colours, we've been making jokes of Christianity for hundreds and hundreds.
And this is one small thing with free speech they got, and they're going to put it on the mainstream news, plaster it all over the place, make sure Donald Trump hears about this, make sure their allies hear about this. Oh, we still have free speech in the UK. You've arrested 12,000 people for memes online. It's absolutely ridiculous how anti-free speech they are. They just want to pass this judgment so they can point to one small thing to claim they still have free speech. The UK, free speech died a long time ago. It's dying in Canada. It's dying in a lot of Western countries right now. And a lot of people are keeping an eye on Sheinbaum here in Mexico to see if she's going to start infringing on our free speech rights. Hopefully she doesn't. If she doesn't, she will be primed to get a lot of support here, even though she is a crazy leftist.
And the cartels. And the corruption.
Of years of Judaism, of every other religion, but why did it take the last 80 years to change that when actually Islam became unable to be criticised?
Through an employment tribunal.
Well, it's not even. Well, the thing is, what you've said is it's specific to employment. So there are. It's not like you've got the full freedom to say it. But it's going that way, which is good.
The problem is that when people have criticised Islam, the school teacher in Batley who is still in hiding nearly 4 years on, in France, Charlie Hebdo, people die. No one's scared of any other religion, but they are scared of criticising that one, and that's what has to stop.
Are there any professions, do you think? Are there any professions?
And that's pretty good. Now, I'm going to say this before we get into that other story, which is going to be more towards the end of the show, and that is digital ID within the UK becomes mandatory in 2029. This kind of slipped out of the government, and I don't think the government wanted people to necessarily know this. I think they may go down the path over the next year of permitting a lot of speech and trying to implement this digital ID so they can catch everybody in the net with the digital ID and then restrict the speech laws. The fact that they restricted speech laws before they brought this digital ID in is making everybody extremely wary of even getting the digital ID, which they should be wary of and they should fight against. I think they're going to have to kind of open up speech laws and kind of have more fair policing if they want to have any chance of implementing a digital ID in the UK. Even if they do that, I am completely against a digital ID and a digital currency.
And speaking of the importance of free speech, and also, if you remember, almost all of the US universities have been captured by ideology and removing voices that are uncomfortable to the left. But now in Florida, at public universities, all tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. Marxist professors leaving Florida is a good thing for Florida. And that is how, through tenure, a lot of these crazy professors and people that are instilling these ideologies that are damaging and that are part of the death cult into young students that then go into the world and continue to proliferate them everywhere. That's how the circle churns.
Well, I think Dos Santos here is definitely thinking he wants to run in 2028. After what happened last time, I don't want to see him as president. I like him as governor. I think he's implementing all these policies that every other governor is scared to touch because he wants to make a run in 2028. He recently is talking about taking off all property taxes in the state, which would be absolutely fantastic. This is another great policy. We've actually highlighted over the last 2 months a slew of policies that Ron DeSantis is implementing in Florida that are absolutely amazing. Some of the best policies around the nation. They do have a bit of a financial cost when it comes to taxes and other things. But that being said, I mean, man, I would love to see more governors act like DeSantis is doing it. I think the only reason DeSantis is really doing it is because he wants to make a run at presidency and he wants to point at the things that he did in Florida and he wants to be able to say, I'm going to bring these policies nationwide. And then, although I do think these policies should be brought nationwide, I don't think DeSantis is the person to do it. I love him as a governor, though.
You need to learn his name. It's DeSantis.
Okay, that angers you, so I always love saying his name wrong.
DeSantis is a football player.
Let's keep playing this. You don't even watch football.
I know, but I know that.
Now in Florida, at our public universities, all tenured professors.
You're Mexican, so when you say football, do you mean American football?
All the rest of the world's football, yes.
Soccer.
Football.
Soccer. Okay, let's play it from the beginning so the people don't miss a beat.
Reform so that now in Florida, at our public universities, all tenured professors must undergo review once every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. So you see professors leaving Florida. The media, well, they don't talk about the ones we recruit in. They talk about leave. Oh, a brain drain. And I think to myself, Marxist professors leaving Florida is not bad for Florida. That's a good thing for Florida. And so we're doing that. And we're also establishing civic institutes like our Hamilton Center at University of Florida, like our Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at Florida International University. I even have a liberal arts college called New College that was basically a Marxist commune when I became governor. Left of the left, no grades, low enrollment, low scores. I actually wanted to close it because it's valuable real estate right there in Sarasota. But the community liked it, so I'm like, all right, if we're going to fund it. So I filled the board with conservatives. They fired the president. They hired a conservative president. They were the first school in America to eliminate DEI. They abolished gender studies, and they said we are going to be a classical liberal arts college. And so now the enrollment's high, test scores are up, and we're going to be the best liberal arts college in the country for conservatives. If we not already are, we will be very, very soon.
That's good. And he's really giving the blueprint to other governors in conservative states to turn around their education system, turn around their taxing system. The blueprint's there. More governors need to follow in his footsteps. Too many of them are loyal to lobbyists, and that's why they're not willing to take on these kinds of policies. I guess here we go into the conservative split that's been going on.
So the conservatives and MAGA, America First, etc. should be concentrating on issues like the one we just played and we just talked about, the universities being captured. However, they continue to try and just do the gossip and the name calling of each other and focusing on issues that are not as important as what's actually going to get them votes and get people talking positively about them. So from Timcast News, it's fascinating to watch as all these people make quasi-allies of people like Nick Fuentes. Ben Shapiro attacked Steve Bannon for praising Nick Fuentes, claiming Bannon is feeding a false media narrative that tries to tie Trump's movement to anti-Israel fringe figures.
Yeah, and there was breaking news throughout the day, so we're going to get into a slew of articles here about what's kind of going on in conservatism. But the fact, I've kind of taken the position of the American First side with Tucker Carlson. That being said, Ben Shapiro is making an extremely small tent. He seems to, now not specifically Ben Shapiro, but the group that Ben Shapiro is kind of with is making this small tent organization, saying what is and is not appropriate, trying to ban Tim Pool from TPUSA, which is a completely bad move. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Let's go into this article, and then we'll go through article by article what's kind of going on.
Post, not article.
The other people trying to grab control of the Trump movement is, of course, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, Sloppy Steve, as the president has called him in the past, who has he spent his entire career just glomming onto more powerful people and then using them as essentially a raft in order to jump on a bigger raft. That is Steve Bannon's entire career trajectory. Well, now he has become sort of the most quoted man in media because the media love to use Bannon as a sort of Darth Vader figure hidden behind the scenes and manipulating Republican politics. And the media love a good false narrative. In any case, here was Steve Bannon over the weekend, for example, praising Nick Fuentes. Again,
And we're going to continue with this clip. I just want to say Steve Bannon was the architect of the modern populist movement. Make America Great Again. This was Steve Bannon. He specifically recruited Donald Trump for this movement, gave him his foundational principle and belief. Other than China and tariffing China, that's something Bannon and Trump had already aligned on previous. Everything else, Trump used to be a Democrat. Steve Bannon was the architect and is the one that brought him into power in 2026. And again, when he won
2016.
Sorry, 2016 and
2024.
And 24. Steve Bannon is definitely in the camp with Tucker and that America First camp. That being said, Steve Bannon is not perfect by any means. He's a China hawk. If he puts up another candidate for the next election, I'm going to be very concerned of a war emerging with China. That's number one. Number two, he's horrible when it comes to appointing personnel. That's why the entire first Trump presidency got frozen out. Steve Bannon made most of those appointments. That being said, he is the best populist in the game. He is a populist architect, and he not only wins elections, but if presidents could follow through with the promises they made in their campaigns, then they would continue to win elections. And that's what's currently happening right now. Trump's going away from his populist base and the promises he made to them and going more towards a corporatist path. A lot of people like Steve Bannon, like Tucker Carlson, are speaking up against Trump, hopefully to push him back to the promises he made during his campaign.
Okay, the reason this is happening, we should point out, is because there is an attempt to glaze pretty much everybody who is on the anti-Israel, and yes, Fuentes is just an anti-Semite, anti-Semitic side, in order to shift policy priorities away from what President Trump is attempting to do.
Okay, pause it one more time. And for years, Ben Shapiro would not utter Nick Fuentes' name. When he talked about Nick Fuentes, he would just say that gay kid in his basement, or he would say something else, but he would never say his name. Now he can't seem to get his name out of his mouth, but he refuses to debate him. Let's play it.
Alex Jones had a debate with Nick Fuentes and Dinesh D'Souza. And you see right there, the laziness, the lack of argument, their attitude that they just own this. Fuentes takes this guy apart brick by brick. It's a full takedown. It's a full takedown because the kid shows up. He's prepped. He's ready. Not only is he on point and he's always on attack, he happens to have something called facts. And he just overwhelms Dinesh. Dinesh goes back, and it shows you this old guard who has nothing.
Again, it's fascinating to watch as all these people make quasi-allies of people like Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch Ben Shapiro absolutely kill his career and the bit of influence he does have. I remember watching him and actually liking him a lot, especially when he got in these debates at these colleges. Absolutely phenomenal. I was looking at his subscriber record over the last few months, and he's losing 20,000 subscribers every month for the last 4 or 5 months. He's absolutely taking a nosedive. He's trying to go back to his original movement, which was never Trump. He did not support Trump. He supported the jibby jabs. He did that right into the end. When there was any hope of another candidate like a DeSantis or anybody else, he would hop on board that bandwagon until they were defeated. And now he's just a brown noser of Trump and a brown noser of the administration, and he wants to silence everybody out. He doesn't want to have the debate. He wants to make it a small tent movement. The libertarians can go away. The MAGA first, America First people can go away. Everybody can go away so he can have control.
And now from Timcast News, behind the scenes, there's infighting to which people don't realize is particularly severe. Prominent personalities are unwilling to discuss what their concerns are, and I feel like this is damaging to the movement. And you said you agree more with Tucker. I'm more on the Tim Pool side, where it's focused on the actual things that are important. The midterms are coming up, and stop with the ridiculous infighting and listening to the personalities that are losing more and more relevance by just sounding insane.
TPUSA was a great organization, but you're seeing the donor class really take control of this organization now and silence a lot of the big tent conservative voices and putting a very narrow stream of things that they want to kind of come out. They're banning Tim Pool from this America Fest, which is their big end of the year fest. I'm sure they would ban Tucker too. There's just too many clips of Charlie Kirk saying Tucker's going to be there. He wants Tucker to be there. He will never ban Tucker no matter what. So they're going to have to keep Tucker. I'm going to be very interested at what Tucker says at this event. But the fact that they're trying to ban Tim Pool from this event is next level. I mean, there's only one thing all these content creators have in common that they're trying to ban, and that's that they're America First. They want to stop funding Israel. And they're not even saying it in a bad way. They're saying they want to be allies with Israel. They just want to stop funding Israel in these forever wars.
Tim in particular. There are some that are just have Israel derangement syndrome.
Okay, let's play the clip. It's quite long, but it's important. It was actually a really good clip.
And we were constantly just being told, we'll let you know. Well, as of yesterday, being told once again, we're full, but we'll let you know. I talked with my team and I said, I think we have to make a decision. And after talking about it, we said, if the response was they didn't want us there, then I don't think we should put any pressure on them to have us there. It's not my party, and I don't want to be a part of something that, at the very least, is not unanimous in their decision of whether or not Timcast IRL should be a part of this. If there's anybody at the higher ups who said, we're not inviting you, Tim, then my response is like, bro, I'm not a party crasher, and far be it from me to make any phone call or tell you have to have me. I don't play that game. We certainly have a bunch of opportunities we're pursuing, and there's other things that we're going to be doing for our end of the year finale. I just think that, my conversation with some of these guys was all good things. All good things. Behind the scenes, there is infighting to which people don't realize is particularly severe. Prominent personalities are unwilling to discuss what their concerns are, and I feel like this is damaging to the movement. I am a small island of a weird space. I'm not a staunch conservative, suit-wearing guy, pro-life, or whatever, any of those things. But we do have bridges to these other networks, and we hope to succeed because Trump represents something better than the alternative. It does feel like beyond this, with the Tucker Carlson controversy around Turning Point, with the Candace Owens controversy pertaining to Turning Point, This was the glue. Turning Point was the glue that held everything together, and it's breaking apart. I genuinely believe it was because Charlie was the one who did it. I believe that Charlie would text back everybody. He would assuage fears. He would negotiate and coordinate. And I really do think he made almost all of this possible. Because I got to give some credit to Donald Trump for being who he is. And now with everything I'm seeing, I think the vision has changed. My personal opinion is, many people have asked me, don't say anything, because they're concerned the story of the infighting is going to inflame. But I believe that I think the views and the vision of what we represent and what the movement is going to be is something just very, very different for a variety of reasons.
Okay, and there was actually another clip I wanted to have. I didn't grab it, but where he was actually uninvited from TPUSA. That being said,
Amfest.
From America Fest, which is TPUSA event. That being said, something needs to happen with this Israel situation. I had suggested earlier in the podcast that potentially Saudi Arabia could take over the funding of Israel, where America could pull out. That would allow America to not only pull out funding, but kind of pull out from the region and let the regional players kind of make alliances to kind of hold the region down and maybe get out of these forever wars.
And Steve Sufaro says, brilliant. I never knew Bannon made the disastrous picks in Trump's first term. He also says, yes, Israel derangement syndrome is real. And Steve Sufaro also says, influencers have gotten to the point where everyone must fit into an identified category.
Yeah, Steve Bannon did make a lot of those appointments and is responsible for, I think, a lot of the failure in the first term. The thing is, he's responsible for all of the success because he created what the MAGA platform was. So as much as I think he has faults, he is definitely somebody to watch and see who he backs in the 2028 election. It currently looks to me that J.D. Vance is kind of siding with the America First people here and maybe not separate himself from Trump, but really showing his allegiance to that Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon wing. Now, I don't know if he's going to make a break for them or he just wants to try to garner their support in 2028. Now, I know Steve Bannon and that particular wing of the conservative movement haven't put up their own candidate. They're doing a lot of destruction of destroying a lot of the corruption that's going on in the administration right now by pointing it out, but they don't have a candidate of their own. And I'm really perplexed to think who they would kind of put up. A lot of them do like J.D. Vance. The problem is some of them don't like J.D. Vance because of his connections to Palantir. So it would be very interesting to see if the America First people would actually back J.D. Vance in 2028. As far as speaking goes, J.D. Vance is one of the best speakers when it comes to on-stage debates. It's going to be amazing to see him go if he has to try to get out other conservatives to win the candidacy in 2028. It should be his because he is already vice president. We'll have to kind of see what happens. Okay, let's go into another wrinkle.
And what do you think of Steve Sufaro saying that influencers have gotten to the point where everyone must fit into an identified category? Because I think with that, it is a lot eventually when you get it big enough and if you let it consume you and become your work, etc., you do end up being kind of having to assuage what donors and people that pay you other than your audience. And when you get to that point, I think you lose credibility as a lot of these people have.
Well, yeah,
because Tim Pool mostly does his funding, as far as he's been transparent about it, he does his funding through his audience.
Well, I align a lot with these content creators, but I'm also very aware of who's funding these content creators. I have no funding. We're small enough, and when channels are as small as we are, you can trust these are our authentic opinion, even if you disagree with it. The problem is somebody like Benny Johnson, he is literally just a Trump shill at this point. Now, I align with him on a lot of his things, but there's a lot of things I disagree with, and there's other times where you just know he's lying through his teeth because he's taking the administration's line. So I guess that maybe answers that question. Let's go into another wrinkle of the story, and this is very interesting because Matt Walsh does work for the Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's faction of this conservative movement, which is really pushing everybody out. The fact that Matt Walsh is allowed to have these opinions, is it a matter of time before he gets fired? I mean, I don't know, but he's definitely taken an opinion here that goes against Ben Shapiro. Maybe Ben Shapiro wants to have him around to say, look, I allow people to disagree with me.
The Daily Wire's Matt Walsh says, I'm America only in the same sort of sense that I'm my family only. And I think, and that's what you and I keep saying, it's not that I am America only or America first. It's that I like the framework and how it was built to build it also, for example, here in Mexico or in Canada. It should be Mexico first, should be Canada first. But the framework that they built was very unique, and it was something that hadn't been seen before.
Well, yeah, I don't even live in the United States. I had lived in Canada. I was a Trump supporter in Canada. I'm a Trump supporter here in Mexico. That being said, I do break with him on a lot of different things, but I think coming into the midterms, hopefully he does win the midterms. It's going to be a hard fight there. That being said, I want to see how the America First movement was built to have a Mexico First movement where there's a Mexican populist uprising and the people start demanding their needs to be put first, not other fringe groups or this and that, the Mexican people as a whole, or the Canadian people, or the European people. Europe especially, because Europe is putting the elite's interest above every single citizen's interest in every single country. They're literally trying to usurp power from each individual country in order to create a body of unelected officials.
Well, and here in Mexico, we have right now the populist left, which is Morena, Claudia Sheinbaum, AMLO, but it would have to be a populist right, a conservative right, with what that means nowadays in today's context.
Okay, let's play this Matt Walsh clip, and I actually agreed with him on a lot of this.
You know, I'm America only in the same sort of sense that I am my family only. My priority is my family. I will never put any other family above my own. I will help other families only to the extent that it brings no harm to my own family. My family is the only family that I treat as my family because it is my only family. There will never be a time when the interests of another family will come before my own. If I had to choose between rescuing 1,000 strangers from a fire or just one of my children, I would choose my child without hesitation. It could be 1 million strangers that I could rescue or just one of my children, and I will choose my child.
And this is kind of what people are looking to their governments to do, is put the country first and put the people within that country first. It seems what's happening, especially what happened under Biden, what's currently happening in the EU, what's happening in Canada, they're putting every other country before their own citizens. And then they're putting the elite's interests above their own citizens. They're giving all kinds of money away for endless wars, whether it's in Ukraine or Israel or here or there. The basis of the movement is free speech and anti-war. At least that's the way I see it. And the other foundation is to start putting your people first. And that's how you win the vote of your citizens in your country.
I'd say that's my family only. And I also think that every parent would do the same. Now, our leaders are not our parents, and we're not their children, so I hesitate a little bit to make those kinds of analogies, but the same general principle should apply. They should prioritize their people, Americans, above all other people on earth. They should concern themselves with other nations only to the degree that it benefits Americans. If they could choose between helping 10 million foreigners or one American family, they should choose the American family without hesitation. If they could help 10 million foreigners, but it would harm one American family, then they should not help those 10 million foreigners. Okay, this is what it means to be a nation, a people, or what it should mean. And from the time George Washington was president, no American, no one who truly cared about conserving and protecting this country disagreed with this. It's obvious. Now, from the responses I received over the weekend, it is clear that my statements are now considered highly incendiary, even among some conservatives.
Yeah, I don't think it's much to ask to put your citizens first. That being said, once your citizens are taken care of, if there's anything left over, yes, help other countries. But if you do decide to help those other countries, don't help them at the cost of your citizens. We've seen the UN funding mass immigration campaigns up through Mexico, creating stops where they gave out water, food, and clothes for these immigrants from South America to make it up to the American border. A lot of that money was coming from the American government to help people enter illegally, which ultimately lowers wages for your citizens in the country and puts many other stresses on the system, whether it's healthcare or other things.
And security, safety.
And security and safety, yeah.
Conservatives, for stating that our leaders should exclusively prioritize America's interests only. That's what we mean by American only. The only interests that matter are our own. And for saying that, I was criticized from many directions And I also received some words of concern, or perhaps more eager anticipation from other commentators who prophesied that I would be fired for that video that I just played. A lot of comments like that. Well, if you're hearing this and you're watching it, it seems safe to say that I was not, in fact, fired for my job for saying that we should prioritize America's interests. Nor would it have made much sense if I had been, because I've been saying the same thing for many years now, and it's also just really obvious.
Okay, and that being said, we're seeing this rift, and we're kind of talking about this rift through these clips and these articles. That being said, a lot of people think Trump is moving towards corporate interest and away from a lot of the promises he made in his campaigns. And although a lot of these companies themselves are based out of America, sometimes the company's interest aligns outside of America and can hurt American citizens' interests if they're allowed to, if they allow other countries to censor their platform, that sets a precedent for America to then censor that platform or other things of that nature. You have to be very cautious when you put corporate interest above citizens' interest. You want to make sure these corporations' interests align with the citizens, and that's why a lot of the America First movement is kind of calling out these corporations.
And also, America First looks very different, and the needs and what is best for the citizens looks very different in the US than it does in Canada, than it does in Mexico. So it's just following how the movement got started, not the actual goals of each individual country, because then that's where it becomes globalism.
Well, yeah, and what you're seeing in a lot of these countries is just absolutely strip freedoms away from their citizens, whether it's free speech freedoms within the EU or anything else. Sometimes the best you can hope for in a country is an incompetent government. I mean, that's what you have in Mexico. And with an incompetent government, they're too incompetent to infringe on a lot of your freedoms. And that's why you get freedom through chaos.
But then you also get killed.
Yeah. I mean, there's but positives and negatives. But to think the U.S. is going to come into Mexico, destroy the cartels and save the day, there's going to be a price to pay for that with a digital ID and a lot of other things, a digital currency, things of this. It's going to be completely corporatized and digitally monitored in every way, shape, or form, possibly implementing a digital currency. I would rather have chaos in Mexico for the next 10 years where all these other countries kind of implement these digital IDs, digital currencies, or whatever else you want. And then we can see if it works or it turns into some kind of futuristic dystopia.
It's not going to work.
Let the other countries make let the other countries make the mistakes first. I'd rather live in chaos for a little while. We can always catch up and adopt those systems if they do work.
But we shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't.
Speaking of we shouldn't, from HealthBot, all the progress we've made is at risk. Bill Gates appears to be on the verge of tears after RFK Jr.'s decision to withdraw funding for Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. And
I will say this, Susie Wilds is appointing a lot of people in powers of position to try to box out RFK and to kind of stop this administration and align this administration with corporate interest. RFK is absolutely amazing. He has been able to, no matter who she puts in front of him, know the workarounds, how to bring the science and the papers in to actually strengthen court cases and get things knocked down, making it harder to put mercury in vaccines or bring in or ban red food dyes or whatever it is. RFK has had a lifetime of training as an attorney that was taking some of the big cases against the government itself. He knows how to implement laws or other things with policies within the HHS to really make permanent and in-depth change. He's setting himself up very well for a run in 2028. Another person that's doing very well is also Tulsi Gabbard. She's not nearly as effective as RFK, but at least she's standing up true to the base and the ideals in which she came over. She's fighting the good fight, although I don't think she knows the system nearly as well as RFK does, because he's moving forward and attacking, and Bill Gates is absolutely virtually in tears here.
Of course, this is a challenging time. All the progress we've made is at risk. Budgets are tight. And we all have to show our priorities when there's tough trade-offs to be made. There's no denying this is a global health crisis. The U.S.
And he's focusing on a global health crisis. We covered this all last week. The fact that climate change, he wants to take all the money that's kind of been invested in climate change and refocus it into this global health crisis, into these jibby jabs. This is his new focus. And I think the reason he's so disappointed here is he had to kind of abandon this global climate change line. I mean, the Trump administration is just taking down the science bit by bit and the narrative's coming apart. But now they're going after this authoritarian line of trust the science, the jibby jabs were good and everything else. This is starting to fall apart as well. All the big pillars he was looking to invest in and move into the future to get authoritarian control are crumbling in front of him. And RFK is one of the big reasons these new vaccines and things just aren't going to work as intended.
Cuts and other funding cuts, aid in total has gone down by $30 billion this year alone. It reinforces the incredible values being shown by the people who are showing up here today and being incredibly generous. But with the cut in health resources, along with the financial situation a lot of these low-income countries are in, we are going to have a few years where things will go backwards.
And he says, we had a $30 billion budget cut, and for a few years, we're going to go backwards. This just shows the effectiveness of RFK, the Trump administration, at defunding these absolutely corrupt globalist plans that were kind of happening when it came to jibby jabs or it came to climate change. I'm glad to see it, but the fact that he says we're going to take a step back for a few years, it looks like they're just going to try to wait Trump out. So if Trump's successor doesn't win in 2028, there's going to be a big problem because they're going to try to make up for lost time and press even harder.
As we think about this, think of a mother who will bring a baby wheezing for breath to a health center. And because the vaccines aren't available, that baby will not survive. Think of a health worker trying to deal with a measles outbreak, who, because there's less resources for that primary healthcare system, our vaccines, that measles epidemic will continue. This is agonizing. I mean, we have to put ourselves in the position of the parents who lose these children, and how tough it must be for them.
Bill Gates looks absolutely devastated. I hope this administration can keep up the fight and possibly somebody can get another term to keep the pressure on so they can't implement this by 2030. Their entire agenda they want to implement by 2030. That being said, a lot of those jibby jabs he was talking about came with a side effect of not being fertile for women and for men. So there was a big cost to pay for that, and they didn't inform those people of that, and that's why you're having low birth rates in a lot of these countries.
And Steve Surfaro says, correct about RFK Jr. He's made Bill Gates secondary in the U.S., but he's still influential globally. And that is what a lot of these organizations, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Bill Gates Foundation, Open Society Foundation, the HRC, all of them have actually moved to the southern bit of the world, to call it that. Like, they're installing themselves here in Mexico, all over Latin America, all over Africa. So they are doing this whole, we're going to wait and see what happens, so they can then continue the funding, continue the work, but outside of the U.S. to then bring it back into the U.S.
Yeah, and we also talked about the rift that's kind of happening in the conservative movement. No matter who you get, the best candidates right now, in my opinion, are going to be either you have J.D. Vance, you have RFK Jr., and you have Tulsi Gabbard. All three of them have a lot of positive points, but there are some negative points, and you got to wonder if the American First people are going to really get behind any of those candidates, because all three candidates have something in their past. If it's J.D. Vance, his connections with Palantir, the American First Movement, is all over that. If it's RFK, it's his connections to Israel, and they're all over that. And if it's Tulsi Gabbard, a lot of people thought she was a plant coming over, a kind of like a sleeper cell that was going to really bring liberal values in if she can make presidency. So you got to wonder if they're going to back her. Whoever goes in there that has the best resume right now, I don't know if the America First wing will actually back them, and they don't have another choice or a candidate that they're kind of putting up. And if they do put a candidate up, I don't want them to do it at the last minute so they can't be vetted. So you're going to get some kind of negative occurrence in anybody, whether it's J.D. Vance, RFK, or Tulsi Gabbard. But you have to give them a chance at a certain point. J.D. Vance did address the Palantir concerns at a local college recently off the cuff. He was hit with question after question after question, and he addressed them all. I might not have been happy with all the answers, but at least he's addressing them head on, and not like Ben Shapiro trying to censor, not take questions, and not get in debates with people like Nick Fuentes.
And Steve Zerfaro says, wow, they're like the virus. Yes, they are. They have stretched their tentacles, and don't think they're just going to go away that easily. They're ginormous organizations with still a lot of funding and still a lot of money that they can continue to spread worldwide.
We're also seeing the EU and Canada really just trying to wait out Trump. They're entrenching laws, but not implementing a lot of those laws. Hoping they can activate these laws as soon as Trump loses the next election. Right now, there's too much pushback from the Trump administration for them to re-implement a lot of these globalist plans. One of these things is carbon taxes in Canada. What they basically did in Canada was implement a carbon tax, and then there was so much pushback with Trump and the citizens within Canada, they said, okay, we'll take it down to zero. Meaning they, instead of implementing a carbon tax, they're not going to charge anybody, but at any point in time, they can reactivate that number from zero up to whatever number that they want. And they're going to want to make up for lost time if somebody of a conservative candidate doesn't take over from Trump. And that's not the only policies. There's a lot of policies like this within the EU and Canada that are just laid dormant, meaning they've been passed, but they're not active because they don't want to have the pushback when it comes to a tariff or something else. Okay, let's go into the last couple of stories here.
From Express, huge digital ID update as Labor reveals mandatory deadline or you won't have a job.
This was huge. This slipped out and this was not supposed to come out. And they were saying this was free will. If you want a digital ID, you can get it. Now we're finding out this is going to be mandatory by 2029. Otherwise, you're going to lose your job. Okay.
The digital ID card plan is part of the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's immigration package. Everyone will need to sign up to Labor's digital ID card scheme by 2029 or risk losing their job. Those without ID could also risk losing access to the NHS, the UK's health service, as the Home Office says the scheme will be used to transform public services.
And there was a couple clips going active last week of people in the UK. I didn't play it or I didn't grab it for the show, but basically they were saying by Monday, their employer, which was one of the big construction employers for the UK, was forcing them to sign up for a digital ID or they would lose their job. So some companies are already implementing the policies upon their workers. Now, it might not be the government directly, it's the companies doing it to the employees, but eventually the government's going to step in there and put repercussions on these companies if they don't implement these policies. It's very concerning. Everything they want, from a carbon credit score to a social credit system, has to be based upon a digital ID platform. If these countries can resist and the citizens can stand up for themselves, it's going to be very, very hard for them to implement digital currency or social credit scores. So the fight is really about digital ID. If you can stop that, it's going to be very easy to stop everything else. If you're not able to stop the digital ID in your country, then you're going to have to take on each individual fight, and each individual fight gets harder and harder because each layer of digital surveillance kind of secures the last layer of digital surveillance.
The announcement was slipped out today as part of Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's plan to slash immigration, quote unquote. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has previously said he plans to introduce a new national digital ID, likely to involve a mobile phone app, but few details have been released, with the government instead promising to launch a consultation before the end of the year.
And we see Apple launching their digital passport, so you can now have a digital passport where you have access to anything online when you need an ID. You'll be able to use that within your phone. They're trying to sell it as convenience. Well, the governments are planning to put a hard implementation of this in 2029 if people don't willingly adopt these digital IDs. Do not adopt these things willingly. If the government forces you to do it to keep your job, that's another issue, but do not willingly adopt it and make it easy on them.
especially out of convenience. And
Yeah.
Steve Surfaro asks, why isn't Trump encouraging Alberta and Saskatchewan to go independent?
I really hope
He was at the beginning.
I really hope they do. Like,
why isn't
it's
Trump?
the only way that Canada's ever going to get their shit together and realize that stepping on Alberta for the last couple decades like it was a doormat, taking their money and redistributing it to other provinces in the east, absolutely enraged not only Albertans but a lot of Canada. The way they were spending this money and still are spending this money is absolutely ridiculous. Even if Alberta doesn't separate, the threat of separation may hopefully be enough to make the Canadian government kind of change their ways. But as long as Mark Carney's in there, I really don't think they are. He's just a complete ideologue, and he's the architect of a lot of this new system they're trying to engage by 2030.
But why hasn't Trump done anything about it?
He's trying. He's trying.
He did at the beginning, then he went quiet on it for a bit.
And I will say, maybe behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on. There could be a lot of political repercussions if Trump does this openly. There could be three-letter agencies kind of working behind the scenes and financing it. It's just in the first couple of stages now. As the election kind of ramps up, it's going to be interesting. I will say, when we first made this channel, there was only 1/3 rail in Canada, and that was talking about Diagolon. If you said Diagolon, you had the opportunity to be debanked. If you simply said it on your YouTube channel, I knew people that were literally being debanked for saying the word. The Canadian government has always taken this as a real threat, and I'm sure major media outlets, they're telling them not to report on the separation of Alberta or anything like that. The Canadian government absolutely fears Alberta separating, even if they don't show it.
Steve Surfaro also says China seems to be funding digital ID because of their massive global databases. Yes.
Yeah, I don't even think it's just China. China already has implemented it.
But worldwide they want.
I think it's a lot of these tech companies in the United States that are really starting to coordinate with the Trump administration, which is very concerning, that want to bring these digital IDs. Now, they're not necessarily talking about mass rolling it out in the US, because I think they think it's a sensitive subject, but they're working in cooperation with a lot of these other governments to roll these digital IDs out in the EU and the UK. A matter of fact, in the EU, they said in their legislation that they would protect the data of the citizens that got these digital IDs. Now they rewrote that legislation very late at night, and there was barely any news headlines about it. And what it basically said is they would exchange the data of their citizens to the tech companies in the US if the US tech companies would help with censorship within the EU. So they're exchanging data for censorship. And I don't know if I don't know if the tech companies are going to go along with it, but if they do, they're extremely comparable for it.
And Steve Surfaro also says, speaking of the tech companies, Apple also has a massive database because of face unblocking and short-range LiDAR face mapping. And yes, they already have the first steps that are needed. And again, we just saw this past week them rolling out this digital passport and making it seem like it's all out of convenience and safety and security and the same talking points the entire global system that wants digital ID has been using.
Well, they're trying to encode a lot of this into the hardware. I know with my Windows, I need to update the Windows that I have right now. I can't do it because I don't have
the Windows computer.
I don't have a tracking chip in my big computer here. They need you to have certain new hardware so they can track a lot of the things you're doing within your computer, which is crazy. So I don't know if this computer is going to be no good in a couple of years or what's going to happen to it, but.
And another thing that has the globalists scared is the whole banking situation. From Marian Alfal, ECB to banks, brace yourselves for unprecedented shocks and chaos.
Okay, and this is, we're going to read this whole thing. It's quite long, but I just kind of want to set it up. Okay. They're currently trying to roll out a digital ID in Europe. A lot of people are going to be unwilling to adopt this thing. They're going to need some kind of financial collapse in order to force people into a digital currency. And I think that's what a lot of this is about. And this warning is coming out of the EU. And I think it's because they're planning a coordinated collapse of their banking system and force their citizens into digital currency, which is programmable, meaning they can force you to spend your money so the economy can keep rolling, or they can tell you what you can and can't spend your money on, or they can charge different prices for different things in the store for different people. Okay, you can go ahead and read this.
Okay. The European Central Bank told Eurozone banks that they need to prepare for major disruptions that would wreck financial systems. The ECB says banks face a new reality where crises hit more often, from trade wars to cyber attacks. Banks need to be ready for anything without knowing what disaster strikes next. Geopolitical tensions, trade wars, climate crisis, aging populations, and rapid technological changes are making the financial system more fragile and increasing the chances of rare but severe disasters. Everything's on fire and more fires are coming. To prepare, the ECB wants banks to keep enough cash reserves as a cushion, update their computer systems, and stay alert. The ECB will also watch them more closely. Right now, banks are doing fine. They're profitable and financially healthy thanks to steady economic growth, but the ECB warns this won't last. US-EU trade tensions and political risks could hurt major industries like cars, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. Stock markets could also suddenly crash because prices don't reflect how risky things actually are. Enjoy the calm while it lasts. The storm is coming.
Yeah, a digital currency is coming, and the EU is warning the banks that there's going to be some kind of collapse, that it's coming, and they won't say it's to force people into digital currency, but I think that's exactly what is coming, and I think the EU is going to be one of the first places that roll out a mandatory digital currency. Okay, let's go into this. And these last couple stories were, I think both of them were about Israel, and they were both very concerning. I don't have necessarily a problem with Israel. I do have a huge problem with Netanyahu and his 7 wars. As soon as they get one peace deal done with Palestine, on the exact same day, he starts bombing Lebanon. As we showed earlier in the show, he's building a wall on Lebanese territory. That's only going to inflame tensions. He's now talking about possibly launching a nuke at Iran if the U.S. doesn't help. I mean, this guy's absolutely insane. They need to get him out of power and replace him with somebody that's a lot more level-headed. You do have Saudi Arabia right there willing to align with Israel and really quell tensions in the region. I mean, if he loses power, he knows he's going to be put to court and possibly thrown in jail. Israel has done it to some of their former leaders, and if anybody has broken the law, it's probably Netanyahu. And this is not somebody that's extremely pro-Palestine. You're not going to see me waving the Palestinian flag. That being said, Netanyahu is the biggest danger to the Israeli people. He's turning the world against Israel.
From Monitor X, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says we have struck Iran's terror axis from 360 degrees over the past 2 years, and we are not done yet. More action is required.
Okay, this was the first statement. It was actually the second statement that's far more concerning, but let's take a look at the clip before we look at the next statement. Oh, it's in Israeli. Okay, that's
Hebrew.
Hebrew, yeah. Let's go into the second clip, and this was really the concerning clip, and this was the first clip that I seen.
From Julian Doré, Israel told Trump the quiet part out loud. We have nukes and we'll use them if you won't hit Iran. Former CIA spy John Kiriakou breaks down the classified conversation his source witnessed. So this is, again, coming from a source to a source. But
yeah, but this guy has been fairly reliable in the past. So he's very much in conservative circles. Okay, let's play this.
The reason, though, I'm told, that Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran was that the Israelis said, for the first time, if you don't bomb Iran to take out these deep bunkers, we're going to use nuclear weapons. And they had never threatened that before. And so Trump said, bombing Iran might actually save us from the start of World War III if it keeps the Israelis from using nuclear weapons.
So according to your source, the Israelis told the President of the United States that if he did not use the United States military power to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, Israel, acting on its own, would use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Do you see why there's a problem with that statement, John?
Yeah.
Because they've never admitted that they've had them.
That's right.
So you're telling me that they just admitted to the President of the United States that they have nuclear weapons and we still do not have them in the IAEA treaty?
I mean, if
yeah,
Israeli nuclear...
For a second, Israel's the only country that's refusing to go into the IAEA and have a treaty for their nuclear weapons. They deny they even have their nuclear weapons. This is absolutely insane. And if Donald Trump actually bent the knee on the threat that we're going to use nuclear weapons, what's going to stop them from using that threat again or possibly following through with that threat and using their nuclear weapons? They're currently at war with 7 countries. Okay.
Their whistleblowers are to be believed. Yeah, they've had them. They started working on them in the 50s. They got him around the late 60s or the early 70s. Look at Mordechai Vanunu. You know, he wasn't charged for treason for nothing.
That's the guy who they hid in Rome with the honeypot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And I will say this, Israel's being their own worst enemy right now. They have Netanyahu in power, which even a lot of the Israeli people do not want him in power because he's just starting conflict after conflict. They don't even have a manageable amount of conflicts. If you had 1 or 2, maybe you can manage that. With 7, it's just ready to spark into an absolute bonfire. That being said, also you're having Ben Shapiro and other commentators like Ben Shapiro trying to bring in censorship into a movement, an America First movement that was all about free speech. Okay.
And Steve Sufaro says, if digital ID storage is made into eSIMs, I think they'll win because phone wallets and NFCs are now primary secure financial instruments.
Yeah, people might have to get rid of their phone. I mean, I'm prepared to get rid of my phone. I've been using my phone less and less. I use it a lot for the show to take notes, but I don't use it as for a phone as much as I used to. So it would be a lot easier for me to get rid of my phone, but I'm prepared to do that because I think they're going to have it mandatorily put into phones eventually. Okay, that's it for today's show. If you're not if you're not subscribed, please do so. We're trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers. Me and Nat will be back tomorrow. She'll actually be live on set rather than just a voice. And thanks for tuning in.
And thank you so much to Steve Sufaro and Rafa for commenting. We always read all the comments, so please do let us know what you think and what you think of the stories we talk about.
Adios.